Thank you so much. Well, we would be here all night and into the morning because this is a critically important hearing and tens of thousands of ALS patients have been waiting just for this moment. And we are so grateful to be here. So Chairwoman Neshu, Chairman Pallone, and Ranking Members McMorris, Rogers, and Guthrie, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today.
My name is Brian Wallach. I am 40 years old. I have been fighting ALS for 4 years.
I am Sandra Abrevaya. I'm a caregiver. I am Brian's wife. And as you will hear today, I will be his voice. We have 2 young daughters. One turned 6 2 weeks ago, and our second daughter, she turns 4 on Saturday. Professionally, I have served as a staff member in the House, in the Senate, in a federal agency, and Brian and I together served as staff members in the White House. At the time that Brian was diagnosed, he was 37 years old, and he was an assistant United States attorney.
This is our closing argument for our lives.
This is our closing argument for our lives. As you just heard from the panel's expert ALS clinicians, we are all aligned. ALS, while currently a 100% fatal disease, is no longer hopeless. Today, there are more promising therapies that are slowing or stopping ALS in people, not in animal models, in people. So the question we all need to answer today is the one I am so tremendously grateful that so many members, perhaps a record number of members, asked in a unified voice today. How do we get the tens of thousands of ALS patients alive and dying today using the tools and the science that currently exists? Therapies that can keep patients alive, to be here to see cures. And I am excited to tell you that the answer is abundantly simple. Make the FDA act with urgency and regulatory flexibility it promised in its 2019 guidance to approve the drugs that are stalled right now. It is abundantly simple, and it is within your power. Despite what you heard from the FDA this morning, it has never historically required a biomarker to approve an ALS therapy. Instead, FDA has used 2 outcome measurements to approve ALS therapies in the past: survival length and the ALS-FRS scale, which measures a patient's ability to do things like walk up the stairs or cut their own food. I think it's extremely important for this committee to know the data, the facts. I can tell you, Brian and I have done our homework. Radicava is a drug that was approved for patients in 2017, and the FDA cited that it slowed patients' progression on the ALS-FRS scale. The trial for AMX35, one of the 2 drugs being stalled now, also showed that it did the same thing. It slowed progression on the ALS-FRS scale. And I might add, it gave patients an average of 6.5 months longer to live when compared to the placebo. Interestingly, AMX turns out it's headed for speedy approval in Canada and Europe, and it's based on the very same data that the FDA had a year ago. It certainly begs the question of why didn't FDA approve this a year ago? The trial for the second therapy being stalled is called NEURONE, and that trial showed that for those patients who started the trial with a score of 35 or higher on the same ALS-FRS scale and received the drug, their score at the end of the trial was 2 points higher. We heard again and again today, we need science, we need data. I am telling you what the data was. It is publicly available. For patients who entered the trial with a 35 or higher, they scored 2 points better than the placebo. You can go back and look at Radicava on the FDA website. That is the exact same type of success rate that Radicava had when it was approved in 2017, which begs the question, why has this therapy neuron, which is successful for a subset of the patients in the trial, not being approved? Moreover, after that neuron trial, several patients have been able to access it through a small expanded access program, and a number of them have seen it halt their progression or improve their function.
Phil Green.
Phil Green is a friend of ours who can now buckle his seatbelt and take his own pills. I can tell you, Brian can't do either of those things. And we just turned 40. For a clearer explanation of expanded access than I think we were all provided with today, I would encourage you to go to fda.gov. On that site, you will see very clearly that just as Dr. Andrews articulated, in order to be eligible for expanded access, quote, on their website, patient enrollment in a clinical trial is not possible. Let me be super clear. Expanded access in no way endangers a clinical trial. Second, it was great to hear the FDA this morning say they're so supportive of expanded access for patients. If that is true, I would ask the FDA to publicly announce their support for Act for ALS, which will fund expanded access programs. As Dr. Andrews also said, again, you will see the ALS clinical community and the ALS patient community is all aligned, uniform. Expanded access is not affordable for the small biopharma companies that are currently in the ALS scene. We need the funding in Act for ALS. So if anybody in this room wants to see patients get access to expanded access, you have to do that by giving it funding. And Act for ALS is the vehicle to do so. The FDA's recent decisions are all the more shocking in light of their own September 2019 guidance, which again, I am so grateful that so many members brought up today. However, it said it would exercise flexibility and urgency, and sadly what we have seen is even less urgency and less flexibility. They have asked the two drugs I have repeatedly mentioned, AMX35 and Neurone, to run another large placebo-controlled trial prior to any approval. That means these therapies won't be approved for 4 years. Let me remind you, when you are diagnosed with ALS, you are told you have 2 to 5 years to live. So if this won't be on the market for 4 years, every single ALS patient, including us, will be dead before having access to either therapy. Congressman Upton asked an excellent question of the FDA today. How can Congress help?
FDA did not answer this question.
FDA did not answer that question. So we, as the patients who are dying, whose lives are on the line, we will answer it for you. 1, urge FDA to approve AMX35 today. 2, urge FDA to approve Neurone for the over 35 subgroup today. 3, pass Act for ALS, which funds expanded access today. 4, pass the Promising Pathways Act to provide a conditional approval pathway for rapidly progressing fatal diseases, even beyond ALS. I beg of you, there are tens of thousands of patients who are watching this from their homes, wheelchair-bound, some of them on life support, watching this today. Their hope is in this hearing. Some of them have waited and postponed their decision for suicide to see this hearing. I don't think you understand what this hearing means to us. Please do not let another generation of ALS patients die in pursuit of the perfect. Please let this be the first generation to survive.
We want to live. You have the power to make that possible.
We want to live. You have the power to make that possible. Thank you, Chair.